Greetings. This is Top Hat and Buttered Popcorn. My name is John Savers. I'm your host, and today we'll look at a couple of films. This being so. Now, another film I'd like to talk about is X-Men. This is an odd little film. It does have good special effects. It opens with a narration which gives forth a premise which appears to be mostly rubbish. The storyline seems to be something like this. Mutants are slowly gathered together to see if they can get along with humans, but unfortunately, because of persecutions and hostilities, the mutants are divided into two camps, and the issue is whether or not the mutants and the humans can live together. The human population is in the majority now and seems to be fairly hostile. So it does take on a certain combative atmosphere for the mutants. So the question arises for them, fight or perhaps accommodate the humans. Will the humans cooperate? Well, so it goes. Now, this particular film it stars some people I'm not too familiar with. We do have Mr. Stewart, the person known as Jean-Luc Picard in the Star Trek film. In fact, much of the characters in this film have that Star Trek ultra quality, otherworldly quality, and would fit in perfectly with any Star Trek episode, I think. At any rate, he is known as Dr. Xavier, as I recall, and he runs a school for gifted mutants. He calls it basically a school for the gifted, but they're all mutants, so it's sort of a euphemism. Now, the opposed mutants are led by Dr. Magneto, and he has as his group such characters as Sabretooth, Toad, Mystique, Shape Changer, and so forth. His group seems to be a little bit on the bestial side. Sabretooth looks like a linear descendant of Low-Man, the creature on the island of Dr. Moreau, who was rather beastly. Now the connection here is only apparent since Sabretooth is, after all, a five-fingered man and hence could not be descendant from Low-Man, but it gives you an idea. So at any rate, now the film has a good opening preamble in which at the time of the credits and so forth, which leads to a kind of gritty, somber depiction of Nazi Germany. We see a rather confused setup here. It appears that a family is being broken apart. We see a lad who seems to be separated from his parents. The milieu is very confused, chaotic, and threatening. We see, along with the lad, the father and mother and others being herded toward an ominous-looking building. And as the camera kind of zooms in slowly and tilts up, we see behind this building a looming large chimney or smokestack. So we're left with the impression that this may be some sort of extermination chamber. But why did the Nazis be so lenient with the lad? Apparently, these fellows noted his singularity. He is a mutant. He is an instant healer, apparently. Well, these crazed Nazis decide that this is going to be improved upon, and we learn this later on in the film, not at this point in this stage, but apparently these mad doctors of Nazi Germany place some sort of super metal structure along the skeleton, and not particularly happy with just this, they include a pair of Freddy Krueger-esque blades which pop out from between the knuckles, more or less like switchblades. Well, exactly when did this operation take place? I can't say. I will say this, though. This lad has a good deal of growing to do, and it seems to me if it was done right then and there, it's not too credible because the guy, his bones are still growing. Now, of course, we know that civil engineers building bridges and so forth can build in such a way that the metal included has a certain slack for temperature changes and so forth, which affect the size of the structure. We don't credit even these the genius of the mad German scientists with being able to overcome the problem of inserting this stuff at this age when he's still growing. But at some point they must have, and it appears from the film that they did it when he was still a lad. Anyway, we cut from this awful scene here with its propaganda value, of course, there. Those of you who have seen my series iVideo on the camps may understand that this is a questionable matter indeed. But at any rate, we get a scene cut from this to present time, and we see this lad all grown up. He's a big strapping young fellow now. We see him engaged in some sort of bare knuckles gambling type fighting, clandestine, run by a hustler of some sort. He is, shall we say, a dude with an attitude. He seems to be able to whoop all comers, and his instant healing doesn't hurt. He takes what loot he has, lives in an RV, and he kind of moseys about, I guess. But at any rate, about the same time, we also see the female lead, so to speak, a young woman, sort of a teeny bopper sort, maybe a little beyond, but she is someone whose kiss really drains a guy, and actually their life force. She is known as Rogue. Now, this guy, this grown-up lad's name is Wolverine, by the way. He looks something like a cross between a young Warren Beatty and a Ponderosa version of Michael Landon, with a certain I was a teenage werewolf aspect also. So it just so happens that after the fight, the clandestine fight, Wolverine is in a tavern. Rogue shows up. Now she has kissed, given a boyfriend a first kiss, and he more or less is flopped over dead, seemingly dead, or near dead, and she's kind of gone bananas and sort of, why do boys always croak when I kiss them or something like this? Anyway, she's rather distraught, and she is out to see if she can find perhaps some of her own kind. There's a kind of a notion that mutants are sort of a group. I think this is what Kurt Vonnegut would call a grand falloon, but anyway, they meet up in the pub. and she is sort of wary in her conversation with him, and he's sort of cynical. They're interrupted by a dude that was whooped in the clandestine fight. Basically, he is saying to this dude, you stole my name because you're a ringer. You're not a normal man. You're a mutant. The Wolverine tells him to scram, and they get ready for another set too, however, this time with blades. But since Wolverine is armed with Freddy Krueger blades in both hands, it's pretty short before he is the ruler here. Now, he kind of in disgust leaves, gets in his RV, has Rogue with him. She is kind of trailing about. He gets disgusted with her for one reason or another, and he takes her gear and sets it on the road, and that's that. Not going to have any more to do with this crazy filly with the Black Widow kiss syndrome. Anyway, he relents and goes back and picks her up, and they go off together in the RV. It's not too long before they're tooling along the road, and they're waylaid by a trio that happens to be a part of Dr. Magneto's crowd. We have Sabretooth, Toad, and Mystique, the womanoid shape changer. She could appear as anyone, or anything, apparently, but generally speaking, we see her as a rather shapely, dark blue womanoid creature. Now, Sabretooth is given to roaring. He's a big dude, and growling and roaring seems to be his thing. He whoops Wolverine with the help of, looks like a log, a big chunk of wood at any rate. Toad, I think, is seen hopping about. Toad is quite a creature here. He has about a 20-yard tongue, and that alone and all these great leaps and hops of his would make most people feel that he's not a regular guy, But he also has been seen in the background to climb up walls. That could disconcert some folks. Anyway, they get the best of Wolverine and Rogue. Well, is it Wolverine that Dr. Magneto is interested in? Not exactly. It's Rogue. He's interested in this life-draining force that she has in her. Now, it might be good again at this point to draw attention to this adversarial group here, the group led by Dr. Xavier, the Stewart group, and the group here led by Dr. Magneto. Humans are really basically incidental to this film. It's basically a good mutant versus bad mutant film, with plenty of weird creatures, and it's something of a freak show in that regard, and sort of appeals to the freak in everyone, I guess. But at any rate, it is a popular film. The group led by Stewart abide in this school, as I mentioned, for gifted, a euphemism. Rogue is taken there, and she meets up with some other mutants. They're all extraordinary, and to say that their work, what they do, could be something done by genetic change is absurd, but anyway, they are extraordinary. We still see Wolverine with quite an attitude. The people who are the gifted ones, the mutants that Dr. Xavier seems to have drawn to his school, seem a more pleasant lot than the bestial groups around Dr. Magneto. We have Storm, who's an attractive woman with weird eyes. She can do things that kind of remind you of Carrie in the final scenes of the film of that type. She can whoop up winds and storms and so forth, however. Now, there's this fellow, I forget exactly what his name is. He may be called Laser, but he has these extraordinary eyes. and he can blast things apart and whatnot with them. He is otherwise a presentable fellow, and he has kind of an eyes for a nurse, I think, there, who has psychokinetic powers, these kinds of ESP-type powers, which the Stewart character, Dr. Xavier, also has in a more pronounced way. She is basically learning, maybe being groomed to replace the doctor. He himself has some kind of weird device, just kind of a correlative weird device to match Dr. Magneto's. Dr. Magneto's thing is his incredible powers over the electromagnetic fields, and Dr. Xavier's are the psychological psychokinesis of the sort. Anyway, they don't seem either one to have too much problem with funding. Money doesn't seem a problem, but in films like this, that is not something often brought up. Now, the people are quite hostile, apparently, the normal, regular sort of people, to these creatures. And just to kind of keep the humans in the picture here, there is a senator who is depicted as warning the people, the citizenry, about the dangers of the mutants and so forth. He is sort of depicted as right-wing nativist ignoramus in the way, a demagogue. Yet, when one considers Toad, his 20-yard tongue, his hopping about, so forth, and the rest of the bunch, some caveat should be given, I think, to the population, particularly when one considers Dr. Magneto. But what gives with Dr. Magneto, anyway? Well, he seems to be someone who was embittered and twisted by persecutions during World War II in Nazi Germany. So, that feedback again, huh? Anyway, we do get this confrontation between the two groups. It does finally come to a head. Along the way, Dr. Magneto turns the senator into a mutant. We find out his process using electromagnetic force is not permanent. It is not healthy, but eventually the people die from it. He wants to use it on all humans because he wants to make all humans mutants, figuring that in that almost classic demented way that we're all alike and so forth, we're all mutants, then the problem of society will vanish. There being no regular humans, there'll be no hate or violence toward mutants. But this seems altogether odd, since these mutants are fighting amongst themselves for most of the film. But anyway, let's not bring that up. So the thing does come to a head, and the whole matter is eventually thwarted. Rogue is positioned on Dr. Magneto's device. Huge welling out of electromagnetic forces occur. It looks like it's curtains for a gathering of world leaders in the locale. And after the world leaders are turned into mutants, can the rest of the population be far behind? Of course, as we've learned, it's terminal for most humans because the process is not perfected. Well, anyway, it all seems to come to a head favorably for humans, and uncertainly for the mutants. We do see, however, a possible happy ending here for Wolverine and Rogue. It seems that his instant healing ability somewhat offsets her life force draining aspect. So when they kiss, wow, fire, as the song goes. Well, anyhow, it looks like they're going to get together and have a relationship, and humanity is saved, and perhaps consciousness has been raised in regard to mutants and so forth. So there you have it.